Okay. So the Gemara says Tani. Sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, the Gemara says Tani Chata Masikim Kelim, the Ein Masikim Shivrei Kelim. The Gemara brings three prices, one of which says you can burn Kelim but not Shivrei Kelim. The other says you can burn Kelim and Shivrei Kelim, and the third says you can burn neither. We discussed last week, last year, a side issue just because we had a couple of minutes spare about binyan and stira of the Kelim. I'm not going to go into that. We're now going to get back to the core sugya, which is with respect to Muktza. So the first thing I'd like to do is just simply explain the maths of the Gemara, just hashman out what the Gemara is saying in Pshat, and then we'll try and take it into a little bit more depth. So the first brisa, which says that Masikim Kelim but not with Shivrei Kelim, the Gemara says this is Rabbi Yehuda, the Islay Muktza, who holds of the concept of Muktza. So we've sort of peripherally touched a few times on this significant machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, which confusingly is presented as a machlokas whether there is Muktza or isn't Muktza, but more accurately means do you take a broad picture of Muktza or a much more narrow picture of Muktza? And every time we've come across it, we sort of avoid going too deeply into it because it's a little confusing and overwhelming, and we prefer to just do it sugya by sugya, and I intend to keep that going here also. So we're not going to make an attempt to understand exactly when Rabbi Yehuda does say Muktza and doesn't say Muktza, or when Rabbi Shimon, who disagrees with Muktza, still agrees to Muktza, because it's many sugyas and significant machlokes have shown him exactly what the parameters are. For our purposes, all we really need to know is that Rabbi Yehuda has a broader view of Muktza and Rabbi Shimon has a narrower view of Muktza. And the Gemara is saying that the whole concept of Shivrei Kelim being Osa B'Hasaka is according to Rabbi Yehuda, but according to Rabbi Shimon, they wouldn't be Muktza Shivrei Kelim because, well, even the because isn't entirely clear, but roughly speaking, because these Shivrei Kelim are suitable for Hasaka, so why should they be Muktza? The concept of Muktza is something that's not omid for any use, like a stone or the like, but this is omid for use, it's omid for Hasaka. It was before Shabbos omid for use, it was a Kelim, so Rabbi Shimon would say, why should this be Muktza? And I'm getting an indication that my internet here is forwarded. Can just someone online just confirm with me that they're able to hear this? Is this okay? Someone can hear my. Are you able to see it or not? Were you able to connect? Or you had what the recording? Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear. It's a bit on and off, but we can hear.
Bit on and off, and you can hear. Okay. Okay. So the machlokas. So the Gemara simply says that this is Rabbi Yehuda who takes a tighter view on Muktza, who holds more of Muktza, who told that Shivrei Kelim are forbidden Hasaka. Why are they forbidden Hasaka? Some variant of them not being Muchan. It's true that before Shabbos they were Muchan because they were a Kelim, but a Kelim isn't omid for the shtamshus of being broken and burnt. A Kelim is explicitly for use, not for burning. No one burns Kelim, and therefore they're not Muchan for be burnt. The shtamshus of using them as firewood is perhaps noilad, is a new form of shtamshus that's come into existence, and therefore they're Muktza, you're not allowed to use them for Hasaka. That's the first line of the Gemara. Now, what Issa is there to do Hasaka on them if they are Muktza? Why can't I burn something which is Muktza? So there's two answers to this question. Again, are you with me? So all the Gemara has said is that the reason you can't do Hasaka is because this is Rabbi Yehuda who holds of Muktza. Translation, even though they're Shivrei Kelim, and as Kelim they were not Muktza, and even though even Rabbi Yehuda agrees that firewood can be burnt on Yom Tov, and even Rabbi Yehuda agrees that if they were to broken before Yom Tov, they would simply be firewood and therefore would be allowed to be burned. But since they broke on Yom Tov, when Yom Tov started, they were not muchan for use, and therefore they're Muktza. So a Kelim is not Muktza because it's omid for use, non-controversial. Firewood is not Muktza on Yom Tov because it's omid to be burned. But a Kelim that becomes firewood on Yom Tov, Rabbi Yehuda holds as Muktza. Okay, sorry? Yeah, because of no lad or lack of muchan. Question, okay, it's Muktza. Why should you not burn Muktza? So there's two answers really to this question. Answer number one is you're right. It's not really Muktza. Just in all the Gemara really means to say is because you're going to move it in order to burn it. And if you could somehow light it without moving it, and you would be allowed to use it. Situation, because a broken Kelim would be on your work surface in the kitchen or in the cupboard. It wouldn't be in the fireplace. But if you had a broken Kelim in the fireplace for some weird reason, again, if it broke before Shabbos, you might put your broken Kelim into the fireplace because you want to use that firewood. If it breaks on Yom Tov, rather, it's unlikely it'll be in the fireplace. And that's all the Gemara means when it says that you can't do hasak on it. And Shad Siyun, which I referenced in you can see Kotan Lamed Aleph in the the top of page 2, brings that he thinks this is Shittas Rashi in Divya Maschil Masikin. He thinks that's how Rashi learns. Masikin Kelim Yom Tov. Shari Uyin the Toltel. The Toltel in Vietnam, you're allowed to move. Rashi says, why would you be allowed to be Masikin Bekelim? Because you're allowed to be Metaltel them and put them in the fireplace. Mashma from Rashi, that the reason why ain't Metaltelin is because they're Muktza, and as Rashi says, you're not allowed to move them. So Rashi seems to say the problem isn't the hasaka, the burning in an oven in themselves. It's simply the movement. You're not allowed to be metaltel mukta, and therefore the movement is the problem. This is Rashi's view. The Mishna and the Shatzion brings from the Magen Avraham, who says no, the problem is fundamentally hasaka. We I'll have to make this work with my phone. So I don't know where those online left us, but again, there are two. Why are you not allowed to do hasaka with Kelim? Okay, Rabbi Huda holds their Muktza, but why can you not do hasaka with them? So Rashi's answer to the question seems to be not that hasaka in and of in itself is the fundamental problem, but in the process of doing hasaka, you move it because this Kelim is found in your kitchen cabinet, not found in the fireplace, and you can't move it to the fireplace. And this is Rashi Divrei Masel Masikin and Rashi Divrei Masel Ein Masikin. The reason why Masikin, says Rashi, is because they're not Muktza, and Re'una Taltel, you can move them and put them into the fire. The reason why Ein Masikin is to have a Muktza, you're not allowed to move them. So according to Rashi, the issue isn't really Tiltul, the issue isn't Hasaka in and of in itself, the issue is really Tiltul. Were you able to do Hasaka without Tiltul, then Enochanami, it would be Mutter. The Mishnah Berurah, this is the Shatzian's diuk in Rashi, a nice diuk. Doesn't need my agreement, but a convincing reading Rashi. The Shatzian brings from the Magen Avraham, who disagrees with this, and the Magen Avraham says that no, we've seen already that with Muktza there's two isurim. There's the use of Muktza and the tiltul of Muktza. We discussed this, if you remember, in terms of whether you can sit on the stone. We saw this earlier in fact, we're going to see it in the next Gemara also. The Gemara speaks about sitting on the bricks, and we saw this earlier in terms of where did we see that in Kochav David Amdalef? I think we saw that, didn't we? In which Sugya? Something resting on a board, resting something, and so on. We're seeing that there's an issa of his shtamshus using Muktza and an issa of tiltul Muktza. So, and we saw Chassim Sofar, who said that the different categories of Muktza, and sometimes there's one, sometimes there's another. We saw a discussion around that. But you're not allowed to eat Muktza. We saw this with respect to eating Muktza also, even and benefiting from Muktza. So the Magen Avraham says, no, the reason you can't burn firewood, which is Muktza on Yom Tov, is because Muktza is forbidden in tiltul, and Muktza is also forbidden in use. That's what he says. Now, why would you argue on this Magen Avraham? The answer would be because you can argue that burning isn't a use in the classic sense of the word. Sitting on something is me using it. Burning is a benefit from it. It's hana from it. There's not a use of it. The firewood is burning. It's just a chemical reaction taking place in the firewood. I gain from that because I get light and heat from it. So clearly I want it and it's a hana, but I'm not using it. So the Magen Avraham understood that there's an issa in using the firewood by burning it. Rashi seems to have understood there isn't an issa in using the firewood by burning it. He agrees there's an issa in using things, but he doesn't think that this is the issa over here. Rashi says the issa is the tiltal, which would be involved in the use. But were you able to burn it without tiltal, then enochanami it would be mutter. Is this reasonably okay? So Gary, you had your hand up. Yeah. Which sif in Mishra you've gotten? Mishra and Tov in Shinches or Tov Kafalev? Kaf Gimel. Shem Nolat and Mekorikli versus Shavakli. Yeah. Sorry, which one again are you reading? Oh, yeah. Sorry, which under what? Sorry, of Kaf Gimel. Yeah, that is the Mogen Avraham. Look in Sif Kotzon Amadal if you got here. So let's do this inside since people are asking about this. No, he's saying this the Mogen Avram's view in the same way as you can't be metaltal, you can't burn, because Muktza is a prohibition of moving or taking hold of objects, and it's also a prohibition of using objects. And then if you look at so in Sif Kotzon Kaf Gimel Shem Nola to Mekorikli Vashavakli Vasurim Metaltal. They're also tilted. The kach also the hasik bohem, and therefore it's also to burn them. Even if you're not burning them at all, and aside from in komam, even if you burn them in place, kamkin also. The using something is a type of engagement with it that's as significant as tiltal. Yeah, the issa of correct. The issa of Muktza is engaging with Muktza. You can engage with Muktza by taking hold of something, or you can engage with Muktza by using it. Now, that's not controversial when it comes to physically using an object, like sitting on it, that we saw. Where it is controversial is the chiddush of the Mogen Avraham, that even burning something is a type of tiltal. Lighting it is a type of tiltal. Benefiting from it is just benefiting from it. It says, now let's look at the Shatzi in Lamed Aleph, Mogen Avraham. This comes from the Mogen Avraham, that's the source, which I just quoted. He says this is a Rashba. And then he says, when Mogen Avraham says you're not allowed to benefit from it, but anyway, you're madrik for your dying. The Ayin Rashi, then he says, the Shabbos diba maslo masikin, mashma kasas, the olcha ena mezes amuksim in koma after madikin be your time. Less number, he doesn't hold of it. Okay, so this is the machlokas Rashi and Mogen Avraham that the Shatzian quotes. Now, all the Shatzian adds into this is that even the Mogen Avraham would agree that if it's just merely burning by itself, you can benefit from it. It's the lighting which he says is a type of ishtamshus. But if it's burning, just burning, the act of burning and me benefiting from it, even he would agree that's mutter with mukta. And there's a very nice raya for this from from the continuation of the Shulchan Aruch. I can't remember if I did print it here. It's really a Gemara early in Daf Kaf Tes, so we're not going to learn. The Shulchan Aruch adds that once a keli begins burning, it becomes Shivrei Kelim. So if you take a whole keli, everyone agrees, well, not everyone, but the first two prices agree you can burn them on Yom Tov. Once it begins burning, it now becomes a Shivrei Keli because it's a partially burnt kli. At that point, would the Mogen Avraham say you're not allowed to benefit from Kelim and therefore you can't benefit from the fire? The answer is absolutely not. Even the Mogen Avraham only means to say that to light something is a type of ishtamshus, a type of use of it, and therefore it's also mukta. But once you've lit it, when it's not mukta, he agrees that even though it carries on burning, it isn't mukta, and therefore it would be mutter. This is the view of the Mogen Avraham. So just to summarize, even though we use the vocabulary of not being allowed to benefit from mukta, what this really means is you're not allowed to engage with mukta. What is engagement? Tiltal and use. What sort of use? Definitely sitting on mukta. Does it also include lighting mukta when you're not moving it? Or do you say it's not a use of mukta, it's a benefit, but it's not a use of mukta? That seems to be a machlokas Rashi and the Mogen Avraham. Rashi would say it doesn't fall within the category of use that's also for mukta, and Mogen Avraham would say that it does fall in the category of use. And the Mishna was arguing, really it's a machlokas Rishonim. Mogen Avraham can't pick a fight with Rashi, he's an Achman arguing with Rishon. But really the Mogen Avraham is a Rishon, and Rashi is based on Rishon. Shemiya. Correct. If you take a full keli and it goes out, you can't relight it because it is now a Sheva keli. Correct. Yes, that would be the implication.
Can I just ask what the
Just one second.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Correct. That's right. Yes. That would be enough minute. Nice enough minute. Yeah. Yeah. Correct. Yes, you can't shovel. You can't shovel it. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Max.
I'm struggling with the idea that you got an issa of Muktza apart from the tiltal, because isn't whatever you do with the Muktza, isn't that just the melacha? So why do you have to come onto a separate thing of separate?
You can have scenarios of using Muktza that are nothing to do with the melacha. For example, sitting on a rubble, a heap of stones on Shabbos, they're Muktza. You can't move them, but am I allowed to sit on them? So there's no melacha there. It's just sitting on rubble. Here in our city, we have another example of that. Hasaka is mutter on Yom Tov. Nonetheless, according to the Magen Avraham, you can't light the wood even without tiltal because you're using Muktza. So if the issue of Muktza is engagement with Muktza, there's two types of engagement with Muktza: movement and melacha. We saw this may depend on the reasons for Muktza. So we saw, for example, is Muktza really a gezerah of tiltal, or is Muktza a gezerah of melacha, or is Muktza nothing to do with either of those? It's about hachana. So we've sort of again and again visited these ideas. Vaguely, this is just another sort of maramakum in that conversation. Yeah, Shimi. I think that's really the Shulchan Aruch. That once it's lit, everyone would agree that you can't lahafik means to turn over the fire, others to stoke the reason why stoking is needed is to get oxygen and stop the thing, and you can't do that with Shiva Kelim, right? You can't do that with even if you light with Kelim, and if you could light them in the first place, you can't stoke them because now they've become Shiva Kelim. Correct. That's the Shulchan Aruch's point. Yeah.
We are very much distinguishing between yes, differently we don't make a distinction. Why are we so the melachot here, whereas and then saying, oh, there is a difference in other species?
So every time where hana is used in Muktza, really we need to make this point, which is the Shatzian's point over here, that don't misunderstand. This doesn't mean hana like other hanas. It really means the shtamshus. It is in other places also the post can make this point. Hana is a bit of misleading terminology. Hana means benefiting, but there's two types of benefit you can get from something: a benefit which is engaging with it in the use, or benefit that comes without direct engagement. And with Muktza, the hana we're interested in, Muktza is not also the hana in the classic sense, right? You say ashera, avodah zarah wood, you can't burn and benefit from the heat. Muktza, you can burn and benefit from the heat. It's the act of lighting which might be a forbidden engagement with it. It's not the state of being of benefiting from it, which is the problem. That's all. That's really the point of Shati saying. So he's just tidying up the Cadbury. That hana is a perhaps slightly imprecise vocabulary to use. It'd be better if we thought about it as the shtamshus. And even the shtamshus is the type of engagement, and therefore effectively equivalent to tiltal, even though you're not moving it or taking it. That's the thing. Okay, so that's the first stage of the Gemara. The second stage of the Gemara says the Tanya Idach. So this is the view that holds you can Shiva Kelim are not Muktza, and the Gemara simply says this is Rabbi Shimon, who has a much narrower definition of Muktza. Rabbi Shimon quoted again, as I said in Halacha, as not holding of Muktza, but he does hold the Muktza, just much tighter category of Muktza, and therefore Rabbi Shimon holds that these are not Muktza. Because a possible answer to the question is because it says Shivrei Kelim and doesn't specify which sorts of Shivrei Kelim. Mashma, even Kelim which have no use whatsoever. That's a possible answer. Though the Ritva that I printed in the source sheet says not like that. Okay, so let me put that question on hold and come back to it. So, in brief, Rabbi Shimon holds you can use Shivrei Kelim. Let me turn Karen's question really on its head and ask the other way around. To what degree does Rabbi Shimon hold you can use Shivrei Kelim? And which sorts of Shivrei Kelim is he talking about? So all we see in the Gemara is that Shivrei Kelim is Rabbi Shimon. Are there any Shivrei Kelim that even Rabbi Shimon would agree on Muktza? And are there any Shivrei Kelim that even Rabbi Yehuda would agree on Muktza? So all the Gemara has told us is this Shivrei. And you know, actually, I'm liking Karen's question more and more as I'm laying this out. I hadn't thought of it in those terms. But in a sense, we can ask this question as, how does this Brisa and this lining up of the forces in the Brisa align with our Mishnah? The Brisa just talks about Shivrei Kelim without defining its terms. The Mishnah talks about different classes of Shivrei Kelim, and the Gemara doesn't really link the two conversations. So, yes, Rabbi Yehuda has to line up. But how does thank you? How does Rabbi Shimon line up in this? Yeah. Thank you. Good point. Okay. So, yes. I'd momentarily forgotten that actually, so I'm grateful you stopped me making too much of a fool of myself. Yeah.
You hold by, I know there's a lake name, there's a divine place to lake.
Yes.
Do we always have to do they align? If you hold by one, you always hold by the other, and vice versa.
There are differences. And Nolad itself may be a vague term, and there may be classes of Nolad. I sort of mentioned this briefly. Again, I didn't want to get too drawn into it in the last year when I spoke about whether when the Gemara aligns Nolad, is the critical point of the Gemara is simply a lack of hachana, but doesn't mean a new concept genuinely called Nolad. And I again hinted at it, that there may be an extreme version of Nolad in which something comes into existence, which everyone would agree to. Here we're talking about a moderate version of Nolad. Before Shabbos, the Kelim still existed. All that's come into existence is a new functionality. Maybe that's a mistake to really think of that as Nolad at all. And maybe it really means just a non-hachana is really what's going on. And the way I phrased it last time was, the Mandama who isn't worried about Muktza, is it that he doesn't hold of Nolad? Or is it that he holds of Nolad but doesn't think this falls in the category of Nolad? And even if he doesn't hold of Nolad, does that mean he doesn't hold of any Nolad? I appreciate all of this is confusing. Muktza is definitely one of these overwhelming sugyas where there's like layers upon layers upon layers. So I'm sort of deliberately trying to bite off more than we can chew. I think this is the first time we've really met Nolad in a significant way in Muktza, and therefore I'm sort of putting on hold exactly how far. All we need to know for our purposes is that in a sense Nolad is somewhat of an extreme version of Muktza, because it's not just something that wasn't mukhan, it's something that came into existence, or that tishtamshus came into existence on Shabbos. And therefore, even though now it has the qualities of being something that should be mukhan, it's a functioning thing. Nonetheless, it's not mukhan because the functionality didn't exist before Shabbos. Yeah. Yes.
Rabbi Shimon, late name, late name on.
Right.
And you could have said probably, just one, but either one away. The other, Idlay looks at Idlay no nod. Good, and the Babshi, that's the same way.
Yes, so you are yes, you are correct. And again, I think this is in line with what we said in the last year, in which we said there's the machlokas Rashi Tosfos as to what really is the machlokas going on over here in our sugya. But I need to work out the maths of that. Okay. So for our purposes, the Gemara says that Rabbi Shimon says you can burn with Shivrei Kelim. There is one discussion which I don't want to go into too much detail, in which the poskim argue whether Rabbi Shimon means that any keli which breaks on Shabbos is not Muktza, because it always, to some degree, has the hishtamshus of breaking and being my servant in another way by being consumed in flames. In other words, a keli is my slave. So is a keli mukhan not just for use, but also for the possibility of breaking, because kelim break, and then having a different type of use of being consumed as firewood or not? Does Rabbi Shimon hold that as a general rule, or is he only talking about fragile kelim which easily break? Is this dependent on to what degree there's a surprise in the breaking? All of this is spoken about in the poskim, and I just mentioned that as an aside. The reason this is important is I want to introduce just another halachic piece of terminology briefly, which one day when we try and learn Rabbi Shimon in more detail, we'll have to understand. One of the reasons Rabbi Shimon doesn't hold of Muktza anywhere near the extent of Rabbi Yehuda is because Rabbi Shimon holds there's the concept of Yoshev or Matzapeh, sitting and waiting. That doesn't mean to say you're sitting there waiting for your keli to break. It means that people consider something as mukhan even when it doesn't yet have that ishtamshus now, but they know that there's a possibility of the ishtamshus coming along, and a good possibility of the ishtamshus coming along. So to some degree or other, the reason why Rabbi Shimon isn't worried by Shivrei Kelim is because he says, again, Rabbi Shimon, who's quoted as not holding of Muktza, does hold of Muktza. Rabbi Shimon's point is that he agrees a stone is Muktza. His point simply is that with certain objects, you are Yoshev or Matzapeh, you're aware of their potential. Yoshev and Matzapeh literally means sitting and waiting. It doesn't mean you're staring at this pot waiting for it to break so I can use it as firewood. It means you're aware of the potential of a new hishtamshus come along, and therefore everything is mukhan for that new hishtamshus. So a slightly more accurate way of explaining Rabbi Shimon why he holds you can use this firewood, and remember this piece of terminology because we're going to visit this again, is because he says you are Yoshev or Matzapeh. You're aware that Kelim break, and therefore you even though this is a perfectly nice cereal bowl, and I really want to use a cereal bowl and I'll be devastated if it breaks, nonetheless I'm aware that things break through use, and therefore I always have in mind that this is a potential use, and that's enough of a mucham level of hishtamshus for it. So the post can discuss is am I Yoshev or Matzapeh for anything, or am I only Yoshev or Matzapeh for a fragile KD? Yeah, sorry.
So that applies to everything, not just for concrete. When you're showing to pay for something that's starting not going to break, or you can take any vessel can break at any point.
To some degree, Rabbi Shimon holds that you are much more aware of potentiality. Whether that means that he is claiming that any keli Shivrei Kelim is mutter, or he's simply saying that some kelim Shivrei Kelim is mutter, is not entirely clear. Halacha. That's something Yoshev and Sabbath doesn't mean you're sitting there staring at it, waiting for it to happen. It means you anticipate. Anticipate. Thank you. Your English is better than mine. Yeah, anticipate. Yeah, you're anticipating happening. Thank you. Yes. That's what Rabbi Shimon says. Yeah, we know that they're not arguing over psychology. Everyone knows the facts, right? We all live in a world in which we know that our appliances sometimes break. The question is, in Hilchos Muktza, is that awareness and anticipation enough to mean that it's muchon, or not enough to mean it's muchon? That's really a headline version of the machlokes Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah.
Do you hold that if the non-Jew make it into the video on chaburah?
No, because that is too much of a chiddush. That's something new being brought to bear. The concept of Yoshev Matzapeh is something that occurs in the natural world or in a process that's already in motion. So using things leads to them breaking, and objects breaking leads to them having another use now. Correct. Yoshev Matzapeh doesn't mean something innovative that happens. It means something that can happen in normal course of events. In a sense, again, that's type of the machlokas over here. To what degree is a strong keli breaking an innovation? To what degree is it always anticipated in your language, and anticipation being there? An egg being laid is a very extreme version of this. It may be foreseeable that it happens, but it's something that wasn't in existence at all. So you can't argue that this object was mukhan because the object wasn't there at all. Here we're talking about an existing object. There is a keli. In other words, it's there as my slave, and in normal use, new functionality can be created because in normal use things break, and that would be a machlokas whether that's